There's a doctor in Chicago. She makes $380,000 a year. Every morning, she gets into a leased BMW. Her kids go to private school. Friday nights, a nice restaurant. Her mortgage is $4,200 a month. On paper, she's wealthy. In reality, she cannot come up with $5,000 without selling something or going into debt. And this is not a rare case. According to Goldman Sachs, 41% of Americans earning between $300,000 and $500,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. Among those earning above $500,000, 40% say the same thing. Now meet someone else. He makes $52,000 a year, no BMW, no private school, no Friday night restaurants, but he has 18 months of living expenses saved, and he invests 20% of every paycheck. One person earns 7 times more. The other is 10 times more financially secure. How is that even possible? What is actually happening to the money of people who earn more than most of us will ever see? And here is the question that is about you specifically. If your income doubled tomorrow, would you actually become wealthier? Or would you just move into a more expensive cage? Because there is a mechanism that absorbs every raise, every bonus, every promotion, and leaves you exactly where you started. It operates quietly. It is socially encouraged, and almost no one notices it until it is far too late. Today we are going to take it apart, piece by piece. Most people picture financial failure a certain way, someone who spends recklessly, who never learned to budget, who simply cannot control themselves around money. Our doctor has none of those problems. She is intelligent. She completed 12 years of education after high school. She manages genuinely complex situations every single day. She can absolutely do math. The problem is something else entirely. When income goes up, spending goes up with it, and it happens in proportion. Psychologists call this lifestyle inflation. A $15 lunch becomes a $30 lunch. A Honda becomes a BMW. A reasonable apartment becomes a house with a guest room nobody ever sleeps in. Every individual step looks perfectly rational. You earned it. You can afford it. The math technically works, but there is one detail most people miss. Once a luxury becomes routine, giving it up no longer feels like saving money. It feels like losing something. Psychologists call this the hedonic adaptation effect. The brain adjusts to a new baseline and accepts it as the starting point. Anything below it registers as a step backward. That is why the doctor cannot simply stop driving a BMW. At this point, it is not transportation. It is part of who she believes she is. And that is where the trap closes. Because a lifestyle that requires every single dollar of your income is not really a lifestyle. It is a debt dependency with a polished exterior. But where does this pressure come from in the first place? Why do people who could easily live more modestly keep choosing the more expensive version of themselves year after year? There is a tax that does not appear on any return, but you pay it every month. Call it the status tax. It is the amount you spend not on function, but on signal, on what you want to broadcast to the people around you. A BMW instead of a Honda is not about how the car drives. It is about what people think when they see you behind the wheel. Private school, in many cases, is not purely about education. It is about the social circles you want your child to grow up in, and what other parents think of you for the choice. A $120 dinner instead of cooking at home is not only about the food, it is about the feeling of being someone who can afford that dinner. A Charles Schwab survey found that Americans believe you need $839,000 just to feel financially comfortable. To be considered genuinely wealthy, the number goes to $2,300,000. Here is what makes that interesting. A year ago, those numbers were different. A year from now, they will be different again. The finish line does not exist. The status standard gets revised upward constantly, because everyone around you is also raising their benchmark. Goldman Sachs named this explicitly in their research. One of the primary reasons six-figure earners live paycheck to paycheck is social comparison pressure. People earning $200,000 are not comparing themselves to people earning $50,000. They are comparing themselves to people earning $500,000, and in that race, they will always feel behind. Now let's go back to our doctor and count exactly how much she is paying this tax. $380,000 a year. After federal and state taxes in Illinois, roughly $225,000 remains. Mortgage, $50,000 a year. BMW lease plus insurance, $18,000. Private school for 2 children, $40,000. Restaurants, food delivery, entertainment, $24,000. Vacations and flights, $20,000. Clothes, subscriptions, incidentals, $15,000. Total spending, around $167,000 out of $225,000 net. What remains is less than $5,000 a month, and that assumes everything goes according to plan. No surprises, one cracked tooth, 1 month of vacancy in a rental property, one car repair, and the buffer is gone. So who is actually building real wealth? And how do they do it inside a system that seems designed to drain everyone? The landmark study, The Millionaire Next Door, spent years examining thousands of actual millionaires, not people who appear wealthy, but people who have verifiable net worth. The findings dismantled almost every common assumption about what wealth looks like. 94% of them live in ordinary middle-class neighborhoods. 60% live in homes worth less than $500,000. Most have never spent more than $400 on a single item of clothing. 73% have never carried a credit card balance, not once. Warren Buffett still lives in the house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. The study's authors introduced 2 categories: PAW, prodigious accumulator of wealth, the person who is actually building a net worth, and UAW, under accumulator of wealth, the person who is spending the fortune they could have had. Their formula is straightforward. Multiply your age by your pre-tax annual income, then divide by 10. That is the net worth you should have accumulated by this point in your life if you are building wealth at a normal pace. A 50-year-old earning $250,000 should have around $1,250,000 in assets. Most high-income professionals fail this test by a wide margin because their assets are their lifestyle, and a lifestyle does not count. This is the precise mechanism by which a person earning $52,000 a year overtakes a doctor earning $380,000. It has nothing to do with income level. It has everything to do with what happens to the money after it arrives. But what does that actually look like in numbers? Here is one idea that changes how you see everything else. Wealth is not a function of income. Wealth is a function of the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Look at the math. Person A earns $200,000 and saves 30%. That is $60,000 a year going into investments. Person B earns $400,000 and saves 5%. That is $20,000 a year, at an average return of 7% annually after 20 years. Person A accumulates approximately $2,600,000. Person B accumulates approximately $870,000. The difference is nearly $2 million, even though person B earned twice as much every single year. That is how someone on $52,000 outpaces a doctor on $380,000, because one of them is managing income. The other is managing the gap. A Ramsey Solutions study found that more than 62% of everyday millionaires still budget, still look for deals, and still avoid extravagant spending, even after crossing the $1 million threshold. For them, this is not a constraint. It is the habit that got them there. Which raises the most important question of all. If the logic is this clear, why do people keep falling into the trap? What stops someone from simply spending less and investing the difference? Because the system is built so that you don't. Car manufacturers don't sell transportation. They sell identity. Lending companies profit from your financial insecurity. Social media shows you everyone else's highlight reel, and you automatically compare your ordinary Tuesday to someone's best vacation photo. There is another mechanism at work here that rarely gets discussed. Psychologists call it the anchoring effect. The first time you see how your colleagues, people at your income level, live, their lifestyle becomes your reference point. Not the lifestyle of someone earning less, not the lifestyle of actual millionaires who drive 10-year-old pickup trucks. Your colleagues. The doctor doesn't compare herself to a nurse. She compares herself to other doctors. And other doctors also lease BMWs and send their kids to private school. The circle closes. This is why escaping the trap requires something more than financial discipline. It requires changing the point of comparison entirely. You have to stop measuring your financial health by what other people can see. Real wealth is not visible from the outside. It is the number of options you have. Can you leave a job that is destroying you? Can you turn down a project you don't want? Can you take 6 months off without a catastrophic outcome? That is what financial security actually means. Not the brand of car, not the zip code, not the school district. Freedom of choice is the only currency that doesn't depreciate. Let's come back to the two people we started with. The doctor earning $380,000 a year, the man earning $52,000. She lives in financial anxiety despite an income most people will never see in their lifetime. He sleeps soundly because he made one decision that she kept postponing. He fixed his lifestyle before his income grew. So when the income went up, the gap grew, not the spending. Lifestyle inflation is not a character flaw. It is the default program, and it runs automatically unless you actively choose otherwise. The system is calibrated so that every new dollar finds an immediate destination. Turning that program off, deliberately, consciously, is what separates the people who build real wealth from the people who perpetually spend it. Your income is not your wealth. Your wealth is what remains when you stop trying to look wealthy.